Hello and welcome to another episode of the Menswear Style Podcast. I'm your host, Pete Brooker. Today I'm talking to Alberto Solana. He is the founder of Meriggi. Meriggi, it's spelled M-E-R-I-G-G-I, and it is a men's resort wear brand inspired by the Mediterranean. Its storied past, enduring style and unhurried pace. And here to talk about the brand and a little bit about himself is Alberto Solana.
So I'm Alberto Solana, born and raised in San Francisco. Background by trade is in finance, so started in investment banking before kind of pursuing Meriggi and kind of bringing it to life. How I would describe it, I would say it's an elevated take on resort wear. Think about, what you would want to wear taking a trip to, Italy or France or Spain or Greece in the summer.
Where does the name come from?
The name took us a long time, but it's actually short for an old Italian word called Meriggi. People aren't saying it anymore these days, but what it meant back in the day was kind of to rest under the shade at noon. So we took kind of this old Italian phrase and chopped off the end. Thus, we have Meriggi.
Interesting. And you mentioned the word us there. So are there a couple of people behind you? How did you get this off the ground?
Yeah. So I have two partners that work with me. They've been fantastic. So yeah, we've been working on Meriggi for I want to say 4 years now. It's kind of crazy thinking about COVID, but yeah, we've been working on Meriggi for a very long time. Although we just launched last summer.
I'm curious to know why this project for you, because investment banking, my girlfriend was in the world of investment banking, and I know that she's got no appetite to go over to do anything in the fashion world. So I'm wondering, how come you transferred over to this side?
I had always had like a deep interest in menswear. Like I was the kid I don't know how this translates to England per se, but like the kid in 6th grade who wore a suit to like, the school year headshots. Like it was ridiculous. And then I later paid my lunch money with flipping sneakers in high school. So there had always been kind of a deep interest and appreciation for the industry, like way back in the day. I had always been kind of entrepreneurial early on, but I entertained the idea of pursuing it in university, but like cooler heads prevailed. And so I studied finance instead. And so that obviously led me to kind of to the job at the bank and in New York. But, as you can imagine, like that's just like not an environment that lends itself well to expressing yourself, like especially at the junior level. And so it was really tough because I had like this itch for menswear and I was like, how do I do this? Like, what are like little subtle ways? And for me, it was like, okay, like I can wear a specific kind of loafer or like a specific tie to work, but like that's the extent of it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've got a friend who's also from the IT world, and he had still had a very keen sense for fashion, and he kind of went into the tailoring element, like what shirts he wanted to wear, because I think he preferred the buttoned up look and still does, and that kind of felt like his suit of armor. Whereas I'm getting the vibe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the brand for you feels like this is your release from that world. This is what you would like to spend more time doing.
Yeah.
Am I on the money there?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, like literally it came about like the only time I was able to kind of like wear what I wanted was like on the weekends or like the 1 week a year trip that I took. And like the idea for the brand came about after my 1 week a year vacation. So, I would definitely say it's kind of an escape from, although don't get me wrong, like I love to put on a suit, when it's appropriate. Like I love it. I love wearing that.
Talk to me about the swim trunks. How do they come about? Do you take a hand in the design? Where do you source the fabrics?
Yeah. So as far as kind of how they came about, the design wise, at least when the idea came about, and we're talking about like five years ago at this point, there weren't too many shorts on the market that kind of sat a decent bit above the knee. There's a heavy kind of surf community in the US. So like, I just didn't really find shorts that like I felt were flattering and that could kind of like take me from the beach to like post beach cocktails or even dinner, like in the summertime, like I'm living in my swim shorts. And it's not just like something I'm wearing in the water. And so really kind of designing a short that was fit for like all occasions really, and one that looked elegant at the beach and at dinner. As far as kind of like sourcing it, man, given I didn't come from the industry, like it was a lot of trial and error.
Okay, so this is a question that I get asked a lot on this podcast, especially. Pete, where do I start where I don't know where to begin? So you have the idea, you have the germ of the idea, you might even have a little bit of capital, but it's a big sea, and if you're not in that world, you can't take to it like a marlin in open water. You got to start somewhere. So where did you start? Where did you begin?
Where I started led to a lot of mistakes. So rather than telling you where we messed up, I'll tell you what actually worked.
Okay.
Actually kind of had a friend who's actually now a formal advisor to the business and the brand. But he was like, look, for what you want, like start with the fabric. There are these trade shows that take place around the world and they're massive. So like I'm talking about everything from like swimwear fabrics to like stuff for formal tailoring, buttons and yarns. But they take place around the world. And so he was like, go there, book a trip, and I'm sure you're going to find something. So I literally booked a ticket that day. It was like 3 weeks later. And, bear in mind, this was just an idea at the time, right? So like I had to make fake business cards. Like I had to like create a one pager on like the brand and the vision.
Oh, very cool. So you didn't have like a complete web build or anything, but you just had like maybe a mission statement or some kind of a concept.
Yes, exactly. So like we had like created a prototype previously that we were like, it just wasn't workable, but we did have a little bit of photography. And so we kind of like plastered it on this like one pager. And sorry, you're right. We did have like a very bare bones like website previously, but the product just wasn't strong and it wasn't there. And so kind of went to this trade show and introduced myself to several folks, and then ended up finding kind of the fabric suppliers for our swim shorts there. I was later kind of put in touch with somebody to help manufacture things overseas, because, just given where we wanted the short to sit in the market price wise, like we knew we had to make this overseas. It's not something that we could do domestically. So yeah, it took a long time. It was several years in the making, but finally came up with a product that we were happy with.
And it's a great product. I want to talk about it a little bit more, but I know you touched on some of the mistakes you made, and we don't want to kind of relive them or rehash them, but I do think it's important. And I know people that are listening to this want to get an idea of the mistakes that people make along the way, so that perhaps there's a bit of advice you can impart.
Yeah, I think like, how do I put this?
I'll give you a minute and just rehash a quote that I always like to cite about Dyson. He, the Hoover maker, he said, well, I had to like make 1,000 mistakes so that I got the right one in the end. I mean, you have like so many iterations of the final product, but each one of them had to be a huge mistake until he found out exactly which one he wanted. Did you find that you made a lot of shorts along the way that just weren't good enough and not the quality that you had in mind?
Totally. Yeah. Like literally I would say like our first swim short prototype that we made was like literally felt like our raincoat. We were like, we want to have this, like, we want to have a fabric that felt like this. And then not having experience in the industry, like feeling a swatch of something and understanding how that like actually translates into a garment. Like I'm still not an expert at that today. Like it's something that I'm trying to get better at, but like I had no idea how a swatch would translate into a garment.
Yeah.
And so we bought like a bunch of fabric of this like swatch. The cut was actually correct, relatively correct, and is not too far from like our current cut, but the fabric and the trim were just so far off from like what we wanted.
Right.
And we found that like, look, like we can't just kind of leave it to somebody to help us like make all of the decisions. Like we have to go out and like get the inputs ourselves, find the inputs ourselves and be prescriptive and like touch and feel things rather than getting a package of like 10 things shipped to us and say, here are 10 swatches, pick from them. And this is it. I went to a trade show and like every time I go, I'm touching hundreds, if not like thousands of swatches of things.
Right.
Because only in person and only when you feel the hand do you really understand like what does that translate into a garment.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's something I picked up on when I did it. I did a very small course at a fashion school here, like an evening course, right?
Nice.
And one of the first modules was fabric manipulation.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of get a load of fabric and drape it around like a mannequin, like you see behind me here. And you go, right, okay, I love this fabric. This reminds me of exactly what James Bond would wear when he's in the Bahamas, right? And then you think, well, I can make a nice suit jacket out of that. And you realize, oh my God, you can't, this isn't malleable. You can't turn this into anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I really feel you there, that you think, well, I can see it. It looks good on the eye, but if you want to try and turn it into what you had in your mind, then it can be worlds apart, right?
Yeah. It's I don't know how folks with kind of proper backgrounds in the industry, like how they translate it, but like it is like really, really challenging for me to do even to this day. So I think it's just something that I'm going to have to work on to get better.
Well, I mean, it must be quite hard when you have to delegate quite a bit as well. One question I was going to ask, where are the garments made? You said overseas?
Yeah, they're overseas. So our fabrics, our shell fabric, it comes from a mill in northern Italy, and then our mesh comes from another one kind of in northern Portugal. The garment is cut and sewn in Egypt. So we were introduced to a great factory over there, and these guys have only done bottoms for like 25 years or something like that.
Okay.
And so they have a pretty substantial swimwear business, and they're great folks.
And do you find it harder to have a lot of the operations not in San Francisco, for want of a better word, that you have to kind of have? Do you have people on ground zero over there where they are in Egypt to look over their shoulder and make sure things are running okay?
And it is really tough. Like the time zones are tough. So a lot of my busiest times are really early in the morning and really late at night, because I'm trying to catch the end of their day or the beginning of their day, depending on the hour. But yeah, we have folks on the ground there that kind of oversee things. I'm personally visiting like every factory that we work with. So I want to say like 2 months ago now, I spent 2 weeks, a week in Egypt, kind of meeting with the folks that were doing our swim, and then a week in Turkey where we're making some other products that I'm really excited for.
Nice. Well, I guess it always helps that you're going to these places I mean, it's not like you're going to Greenland or anything like that. It's got some adventure there in Egypt. Italy's not such a bad place to drop by.
Yeah.
I mean, I think looking at also the website, by the way, people can find Meriggi.com, and it's a double G. We'll leave all the links over in the show notes. But the website does have a slice of that talented Mr. Ripley feel, that kind of exotic, sun-kissed moments. I think that's just the overall riding arc of this is something that you would actually take and have those kind of sunset cocktails with, either by the pool. You mentioned you can probably take that and then have a dinner afterwards, maybe if it's in the hotel. So what was it like getting the website off the ground? Did you have to kind of oversee all of that as well? Did that fall on your lap?
Yeah, I mean, great reference, by the way. It's like literally I love both of these references because Talented Mr. Ripley is one of my all-time favorite movie. The scene in the Bahamas in Casino Royale is like one of my all-time favorite scenes. So like, shout out. Yeah, creating the website. So we actually just redesigned our website for this coming summer. And man, that was a process. So previously we had done everything ourselves, but we were like, look, we're not developers. Like we need some like real help, really kind of came together as a team. And I actually wasn't the one overseeing kind of the e-com development. We worked together to kind of come up with a design, but actually like putting it and translating it into kind of like code was one of my partners.
Congrats, Albie. I love the shorts. I love the brand. People on the YouTube will see me holding up a pair of shorts that you were kind enough to send on. These are actually kind of just a bit more subtle. They're a dark navy. They're a solid color, but I quite like the classic look of something like this. We both referenced Bond earlier. I feel like this is actually quite a Bondian thing, but there's also more flashy and like showy fabrics. You do have a contrast, don't you? You have like something for more or less everyone that wants to maybe play it a little bit more safe and a bit more mature versus a young element, a young vibe that's going on there.
Yeah, totally. So our initial collection, like I would say, kind of skewed a little darker. And then, for example, I'm actually wearing the navy shorts right now. This summer, we wanted to kind of bring a little bit of warmth into the collection. So a lot of the colors, especially this summer, like kind of feel a little bit warmer, a little bit brighter, but still kind of true to the color palette of the brand, which is like very much inspired by kind of like the Mediterranean and the coastline and things you'd come across in the cities over there.
I know you got a hard out, Albie. We said on the email that you got to catch a plane. Are you going somewhere nice? Are you going to Italy at the moment?
No, I
No?
wish. I wish. Just headed down headed down to LA. My car has been in the shop, so I have to pick it up and drive it back up. So
It must be nice to get over. Do you have like a favorite part of Italy that you can go to and wear
uh,
these shorts?
I would probably say I'd say like Liguria has we did our campaign there last summer. We shot it in a few different places. So we did a couple. We were in Camogli for a few days, and then Santa Margherita Ligure for a couple of days, and like that area was. And this was like right after Italy opened up, so it's hard. So I don't know I don't know what it's like in like in a normal environment with all the tourists, but it was such a special place to be, and everybody that we met was so kind, and the colors were incredible. Like probably my favorite place, at least like by the water in Italy.
Nice. There's no place like it. I'm lucky enough that I haven't been to any of the parts you mentioned, but I imagine places like Cinque Terre would be a
Yes.
great photo shoot. Genoa, I've been up and kind of done the tour from the top to the bottom that way. Been to, we mentioned the talented Mr. Ripley earlier. Been to Isle of Biscay, not Isle of Biscay, sorry, Ischia. It's weird. So you have like Ischia and Capri like next to each other. You can actually see one island from to the other, and everyone talks about Capri, but Capri
Yeah.
doesn't have any beaches. It's Ischia that's got the beaches, right? So that's what you go. Right, let's say that's why everyone kind of moors their yachts up that you see over Capri, but you don't get any beach shots over on Capri. You got to go over to Ischia, which is on the other side.
Yeah. No, totally. The rock formations are gorgeous though.
Yeah, no, they are. It's actually quite a cool place. I was so lucky. They had a volcano eruption a couple of years ago, and had a really bad time on the island. And
Oh
the
no.
hospitality industry were kind of like screwed basically because all the tourists went away. So they did this huge campaign where they got some writers in and some journalists to tell everyone that Ischia is open again. So I was lucky. I pulled the good straw on that one and got invited over. So that's another show. Albie, your favorite film that features San Francisco and or the Golden Gate Bridge?
Oh, man.
I know I'm throwing him right under the bus with these questions. But I'll go first. I mean, the Golden Gate Bridge, I think, has remained unmolested for about 100 years worth of filmmaking, and now every disaster movie seems to want to take out the Golden.
No, that's when you said that, and I was like, the first thing that came to mind was like one of the Rocks movies or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, every kind of anything that happens with a hurricane or a force of nature, the first thing that goes, especially on the posters, is the Golden Gate Bridge. But my favorite San Francisco film with the Golden Gate Bridge, A View to a Kill. You got Roger Moore, Christopher Walken duking out at the top of that.
Man, I honestly like cannot say I know it.
Oh, you got to go back and just go back and watch A View to a Kill because it's an incredible Bond movie.
Yeah.
And then you have the penultimate ending. I won't tell you how it goes, but basically they're having a fight on top of the Golden Gate Bridge, and it is a masterpiece.
No, it's on my bucket list, or one of the things I want to do is like go through all of the Bond movies like start to finish.
Oh.
And it's like something I always want to do on a plane, and then I get on the plane and then I'm like, well, there are like 50 movies in front of me, or like like never get around to it. It's so unfortunate.
Here's one movie that's not 60 years old. I'm going to watch this one instead. Yeah, no, I feel you. But I'm also very jealous of you not having seen all the Bond movies. Crikey.
Yeah, no, it's
an enviable place to be.
It's definitely on the to-do.
Well, you got to think of it as product research. So I've interviewed a couple of other founders, won't mention their names here, for other swimwear brands, and they've had Sean Connery and the likes of the Bonds on the mood boards right from the beginning. So there's always a streak of Bond, and we mentioned the shorts that we have here are very reminiscent of what you might see Daniel Craig wear in the Bahamas or Jamaica.
Yeah.
So I imagine it's on your mood board as well.
Totally. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's The mood board's digital right now, but
Unfortunately, behind me, he's just got the shopping list on the whiteboard,
yeah.
but we won't dwell on that. Albie, real great talking to you. Congrats on the brand. Thanks so much again for sending through the shorts. Meriggi.com, the place you can go and hang out at Meriggi on Instagram and follow the journey there.
That's right. Thank you so much, Pete. It's been such a joy chatting. Can't thank you enough.
You've been listening to the Menswear Style podcast. Be sure to head over to menswearstyle.co.uk for more menswear content and email info@menswearstyle.co.uk if you would like to be a future guest on the show. Finally, please help support the show by leaving a review on iTunes or wherever you're listening to this podcast. Until next time,